Once upon a time, at the edge of a big forest, there lived a little girl and her mother. Every summer's day, this little girl ran to the fields to make chains of blue and yellow flowers to wear in her hair, and sometimes she made little baskets of green burrs, which she filled with delicious red raspberries for supper. She loved to stand barefoot on the stones in the brook, watching the little fish dart in and out, and feeling the cool water run over her pink toes. On rainy days, she would run under the trees in the big woods. There the branches were so leafy and thick they made a green roof over her head and kept her warm and dry. In the mornings, she ran about the house helping her mother. First, she washed the cups and saucers and put them safely back in the big cupboard. This cupboard was so high she had to climb on a tall stool to reach all the shelves. Then she dusted the tables and chairs and swept the floor with her little broom. She made the beds, put each pillow neatly in place, shook the covers, and smoothed them down. Sometimes she was allowed to help her mother bake delicious cookies and cakes. She liked this best of all. When the pots and pans were washed and put back in their places, the cakes were ready to come from the oven, and as a special treat, her mother would pop one in her mouth, asking her if they were as good as they looked. And of course they were. No one could make as delicious things to eat as Mother. Now this little girl also had a grandmother who lived on the other side of the forest. Grandmother loved to sew and knit warm things to wear. And one day, she gave the little girl a present, all her own to take home. What do you think it was? It was a little red cape with a hood to keep her cozy and warm. There were red ribbons stitched to it, and they tied snugly under her chin. All the people in the village loved to see the little girl going by, with a hood tied over her head, and they would call to one another, "There she goes! See? There goes Little Red Riding Hood." And that's how she got her name. One fine morning, while Little Red Riding Hood was sweeping the hearth, her mother called her to the kitchen. "See what I put in your basket," her mother said. "I've packed it carefully with all kinds of good things to eat. Your poor grandmother hasn't been so well lately, and I think she'd like a little visit with you. Why don't you take this basket of goodies across the forest to her house?" Little Red Riding Hood lifted the lid of the basket and peeped in. She saw a beautiful loaf of fresh, brown, crusty bread, a bowl of sweet yellow custard, 3 ripe figs, an orange, and some brown nut cookies. "Now, my darling, don't nibble at it on your way," said her mother. "The sun is high in the sky, and you'll have just enough time to go through the woods, visit your grandmother, and come straight home before it gets dark. You know the path quite well, my dear, so skip along now, and be sure you don't stop to talk to anyone." She tied the hood carefully under the little girl's chin, and off went Little Red Riding Hood, carrying the yellow willow basket over her arm. Red Riding Hood crossed the meadow, but she didn't stop to pick any flowers, for she remembered what her mother had told her. And when a big brown and yellow butterfly flew to the handle of her basket, she laughed and said, "Fly away home. I can't play with you today. I'm on my way to Grandmother's, and I mustn't stop for anything." Soon Little Red Riding Hood came to the edge of the gurgling brook, but today she didn't stop to wade in the cool water. "Mother has told me to keep straight on the path through the woods." All the animals in the woods knew Little Red Riding Hood, for they played together in the summer evenings. You see, after her supper, she'd always bring them crumbs of bread in her white apron. And when they'd eaten every scrap, they would beg for more. The gray squirrels would climb on her shoulders and tickle her face with their bushy tails, while the birds flew round and round in circles, showing off their beautiful wings. So today, when they saw her coming along the path, the red squirrels leapt from one tree to another, chattering and squeaking all at once. The shy chipmunks peeked out of their holes, and when they saw who it was, they scampered across the path to hop along in her footsteps. Overhead, the gay-colored birds circled and called. Little Red Riding Hood knew them all, from the morning lark to the brown dove that called at sunset. The red-capped woodpecker tapped a merry little tune on a hollow tree, and he seemed to say,
"See, my friend, I have a hood as red as your own."
Even the branches of the trees bent down to brush her hair as she went by. Suddenly, Red Riding Hood heard a rustling in the bushes. The bluebirds flew to the treetops as fast as they could. The baby rabbits skittered into the roots of the nearest big tree. And all you could see was the twinkling of their pink noses. A big old owl looked out from his nest and called softly, "Ooh, ooh." Out of the bushes stepped a big gray wolf. His eyes were gleaming, and his teeth were sharp and shining. Red Riding Hood stopped short in the path. But the wolf smiled, and trying to make his gruff voice sound pleasant as can be, he said,
"Who? Why, Mr. Owl, everyone knows me. I'm the big gray wolf, and I live in this forest."
Now Red Riding Hood had never seen a wolf before, and she didn't know whether to be frightened or not.
"Good morning, my dear,"
said the wolf.
"And where are you going this fine day?"
"Why, I'm going to visit my grandmother. She's very sick, and Mother has packed this basket with good things to eat, and I'm carrying it to her. But I mustn't stop to talk to anyone."
Well, you're a good little girl to obey your mother,"
said the wolf, smiling as he spoke.
Is grandmother's house far from here?"
"It's on the other side of this forest, and I know the way very well. If I stay on this path, it will lead me straight to her front door."
"I see. Well, I have things of my own to do today. Goodbye, my dear,"
said the wolf, and he rushed into the shadows to hide. As Red Riding Hood went on her way, he watched her carefully through the bushes. After she disappeared, he ran down another path that he knew would lead him to Grandmother's house more quickly. The wolf stopped at the house and tapped gently at the door.
"Who's there?"
called Grandmother.
"It's Red Riding Hood, Grandmother. I've come with a basket of goodies for you,"
said the wolf in a sweet, soft voice.
"Why, come in, my child. You must open the door yourself, for I'm sick in bed. Pull on the latchstring and come in."
So the big gray wolf pulled on the latchstring and slipped inside the door. There was Grandmother lying in bed. When the wolf saw her, he opened up his big red mouth and swallowed her whole in one gulp. Then, quickly, he jumped into her place in the bed. He put the ruffled nightcap on his head, pulled the covers up to his hairy chin, and waited. Soon the wolf heard Red Riding Hood coming down the path. He laughed to himself, thinking what a good meal she would make. As she tapped on the door, the wolf cried out in a wavery, quavery voice,
"Who's there?" "It's I, Grandmother, Little Red Riding Hood. Mother has sent you a basket of food. May I bring it in to you?"
"You'll have to open the door for yourself, my dear, for I am sick in bed.
said the big gray wolf.
Just pull on the latchstring and come in."
So Red Riding Hood stood on her tiptoes and pulled on the latchstring. The door swung open, and in she walked.
"Just put the basket on the table, my dear."
Called the wolf from the bed. He had cleverly pulled the covers up to his eyes, so you couldn't see his face at all. Red Riding Hood did as she was told. Then she said,
"Now, Grandmother dear, I'll set out your supper and smooth down your bed."
"Fine, fine,"
called the wolf in a rough, gruff voice.
"Why, Grandma, your voice sounds so strange,"
said Red Riding Hood. She ran to the bed and peeped over the end.
"Why, Grandma," she cried, What big eyes you have,
The better to see you with, my dear.
said the wolf.
and Grandma, what big ears you have, cried Red Riding Hood.
The better to hear you with, my dear.
Replied the wolf.
Grandma, what big teeth you have, cried Red Riding Hood.
The better to eat you with, my dear.
Cried the wolf.
And he sprang from the bed.
But Red Riding Hood ran as fast as her little legs would carry her. Across the room she went and out the open door. Just then a woodsman was going by with a cart full of logs. He saw the big gray wolf close behind Red Riding Hood. Quickly he reached for his axe and gave one mighty blow, and the big gray wolf was no more.
Oh, thank you, cried Little Red Riding Hood. He surely would have eaten me for dinner.
That he would, said the woodsman. And from the looks of his fat gray stomach, he's had one fine meal already. Well, we'll see about that. And with his trusty axe, he opened the wolf's stomach, and out stepped Grandmother, smiling and unharmed.
Thank you, good sir,
She said, you've saved us both and gotten rid of the wicked wolf in the bargain. Come into my house, and we'll all have a good meal. So they opened the basket of goodies, and there was enough for all. And because the woodsman had been so brave and kind, Grandmother gave him the orange to take home to his children.